jury is now present. Please be seated. All right, the defendant can proceed with her opening statement.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have been charged with a crime, a serious crime. And the only question here is, did I commit this crime? Conspiracy. Conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people to commit a crime. Okay, so you see here. Okay. There has to be an agreement. There has to be a plan. The evidence in this case will show that Charles Vallow and I got married in February 2006. It will show that it was my fourth marriage and Charles' third marriage. At that time, we each had 2 children. I had Colby, who was 9, and Tylee, who was 3. Charles had Cole, who was also 9, and Zach, who was 7. The evidence will show that our family moved from Austin, Texas to Chandler, Arizona in 2009. The evidence will show that Charles and I adopted our great-nephew, JJ, who was born in 2012. It will also show that Charles and I were married for over 13 years and were raising 5 children. The evidence will show that I was a licensed cosmetologist and worked as a hairstylist for 20 years while we lived in Austin, Texas. The evidence will show that Charles was a licensed life insurance salesman and worked as an independent contractor, selling life insurance policies and annuities, and owned his own business. The evidence will show that Charles and I purchased life insurance policies early in our marriage, and Charles had them issued to the maximum amount possible to each of us. The evidence will show that Charles was 17 years older than me, and that because of Charles' age and an issue that he had with high blood pressure, the maximum amount of life insurance that could be approved for Charles was $1 million. The maximum amount of life insurance that I could be approved for because of my age and my health was $2 million. The evidence will show that throughout our 13-year marriage, that we always had life insurance policies. When a 10-year policy lapsed, Charles would shop for another company who would approve us for the maximum amount of life insurance. The evidence will show that this was Charles' job. This is what he did. I helped him in this business, and this is what he did. The evidence will show that in 2016, Charles repurchased a new $2 million life insurance policy on me, and he was the sole beneficiary. The evidence will show that Charles and I had a happy marriage for 13 years, that he was, in fact, a baseball player, and that he played high school, college ball, and AAA ball, and that he was, in fact, a left-handed pitcher, a southpaw, they call him, but he was a right-handed batter, as could be attested to by anybody who knew Charles well and his high school baseball coach, Greg Davis. The evidence will show that Tylee was, and in 2014, our family moved from Chandler, Arizona to Kauai, Hawaii. We lived there for 3.5 years and returned to Chandler until she was 18 years old, and she was 15 years old at the time. The evidence will show that Charles and Tylee's fighting increased greatly in January of 2019 when Charles and I temporarily separated. The evidence will show that to physical in 2019. Charles and Tylee had major increasing arguments, 2 in February of 2019, 1 of March in 2019, which was captured on video, 1 in May of 2019, 1 in June of 2019, and then the worst of all in July 2019. The evidence will show that in March of 2019, Charles pulled JJ out of his special school and moved him to Houston, Texas, while we were temporarily separated. Tylee and I then joined Charles and JJ in Texas in April 2019 to reconcile. The evidence will show that JJ was diagnosed with severe autism when he was 3 years old while we lived in Hawaii. The evidence will show that for 2 years, JJ was attending a school in Gilbert, Arizona, a special school for children with autism. It's called Lauren's Life Academy. The evidence will show that in June of 2019, in JJ's best interest, Tylee, JJ, and I moved back to Chandler, Arizona to re-enroll JJ back in Lauren's Life Academy since he had a difficult time with the Houston, Texas schools with no services for his autism. The evidence will show that Charles and I agreed it was in JJ's best interest to be in school where more services were available to him, so Charles and I rented a house here in Chandler. On the day in question, July 11th, 2019, Charles and I were renting 2 houses, one in Houston, Texas, where he mainly resided, and one in Chandler, Arizona, where I resided with our 2 minor children, Tylee and JJ. By this time, our 3 older boys, Colby, Cole, and Zach, were adults and not living at home any longer. The evidence will show that during the months of June and July, that my husband, Charles Vallow, began to send me threatening text messages. These messages were seen by my sister Summer, and that worried her. The evidence will show that Charles insisted on flying into Phoenix on July 10th, as we've heard from the state. The evidence will show that I advised Charles that he could not stay with us at the Chandler house because he could not get along with Tylee, and I did not want them to get into another fight like they had 3 weeks prior. The evidence will show that it was ultimately decided between Charles and I on text messages that he would stay in a hotel because he traveled for business all the time and stayed in hotels all the time, and that I would book it for him since I worked for him and booked all of his travel. The evidence will show that Charles did, in fact, fly into Phoenix on Wednesday, July 10th, and stayed in the hotel that I booked for him. The evidence will show that Charles paid to fly my brother Adam Cox into Phoenix from Kansas on the same day, Wednesday, July 10th, 2019. The evidence will show that Charles planned to come to our Chandler home and pick up JJ and drive him to school on Thursday morning, July 11th, 2019. The evidence will also show you that Lauren's Life Academy opens its gates at 8:25 a.m. in the morning. And the evidence will show that Charles showed up at our Chandler residence around 7:30 in the rental car I booked for him on the morning of Thursday, July 11th, 2019. The evidence will show that Charles began texting with my brother Adam Cox before he entered our residence, and that Charles and Adam were discussing in their text communications that my other brother, Alex Cox, was at the residence. The evidence will show that on the morning of July 11th, that Tylee was asleep in her room and my brother Alex was asleep in the guest room. The evidence will show that when Charles entered the house, only JJ and I were awake and present. The evidence will show that after we put JJ in the rental car, that Charles came back into the residence to receive his phone, leaving JJ in the front seat of the rental car with the engine running. He was 7 years old. The evidence will show that Charles began to scream at me when I refused to hand him his phone. The evidence will show that Charles' screaming woke up Tylee and Alex. The evidence will show that Tylee came out of her room with a bat to protect me, her mother, from her stepfather, Charles Vallow. The evidence will show that Tylee and Charles fought over the bat, and that after a struggle over the bat, Tylee fell onto the ground, and Charles lifted up the bat to hit Tylee with the bat. The evidence will show that Alex then intervened to protect Tylee from being hit with the bat. He did not have a gun. He was not wearing a shirt. He was pulling up his jeans because he just woke up and came into the room where he heard the screaming. The evidence will show that Alex and Charles got into a physical struggle for the bat and fell onto the ground. The evidence will show that Tylee, who was on the ground, was lifted up by me and sent outside to get away from the struggle and to protect JJ, who was still in the running car, in the rental car in the driveway. The evidence will show that after this struggle on the ground between Charles and Alex, that Charles prevailed with the bat and began to come towards me with the bat as I ran away from him into the kitchen. The evidence will show that at some point while I was running away from Charles, who was chasing me with the bat, that Alex apparently retrieved his gun. The evidence will show that I ran outside to the children and that Alex shot Charles in self-defense. The evidence will show that Tylee and I had both run outside without shoes. The evidence will show that JJ was still in the front seat of the rental car with the engine running and struggling to get out of the car. Tylee was trying to keep him in. The evidence will show that Tylee and I got into the rental car with JJ and drove away. The evidence will show you that I drove the children away from the residence towards JJ's school. Can I grab a tissue?
Yes.
The evidence will show that I drove the children through the Burger King drive-thru that Charles had promised JJ. The evidence will show that we continued to drive towards JJ's school and that the gate was not yet open at JJ's school. So we drove a block west of the school to a Walgreens where I ran in to purchase flip-flops for Tylee and myself so that we could walk JJ into school on the hot pavement. The evidence will show that Tylee and I returned directly to our residence where we met with police in our driveway. The evidence will show that we were spoken to by the Chandler police officers. And the evidence will show that Tylee and I were told by the Chandler police detectives that Charles had passed away. The evidence will show that we were put into a police van and driven to the Chandler Police Department. The evidence will show that Alex was taken by police in a police car to the Chandler Police Department, and that we were all three separated into interrogation rooms and we were each interviewed. The evidence will show that next, Tylee and I were brought back together into a room at the Chandler Police Department and were introduced to a victim's advocate who was very kind to us. The evidence will show that after speaking to the victim's advocate, that Tylee, Alex, and myself, the police van, and driven back to our residence. We were directed by the Chandler detectives to take the rental car and return later to the residence after we picked up JJ from school. The evidence will show that we did as instructed by the Chandler detectives. The evidence will show that we drove to Alex's residence where we attended to the wound on the back of his head. The evidence will show that Alex was then contacted by the Chandler detectives to return to the residence so that Alex could walk them through the events that occurred with the detectives at the residence. The evidence will show that Alex, Tylee, and I did return to the residence as instructed. And the evidence will show that Alex entered into the residence with Detective Moffitt, but that Tylee and I were met by Detective Inkland in the front yard. The evidence will show that at the time, Detective Inkland asked Tylee and myself if we had Charles' cell phone. Tylee retrieved Charles' cell phone from the rental car and gave it to Detective Inkland at 3:11 p.m. on July 11th, 2019. And at that time, Charles' phone was placed in the custody of Chandler police detectives. The evidence will show that Detective Inkland asked us if we knew the passcode on Charles' phone, which Tylee proceeded to give to Detective Inkland. The evidence will show that Tylee and I left the residence to pick up JJ from school. while Alex remained at the residence with the detectives. The evidence will show that by the time Tylee, JJ, and I returned to the residence, that all police, EMS, CSI, and detectives were gone from the residence and only Alex remained. The evidence will show that the next day, I contacted Chandler Police to inform them that Charles' belongings were still at the hotel. I asked the detective if I should go get them, and I was told that they would take care of it. The evidence will show that I asked the detectives, what should we do next? And they directed us that they would contact us in about 3 weeks after their supervisor passed off their reports and Alex could go to the police station and retrieve his gun. The evidence will show that the last thing I heard from Chandler Police Department until June of 2021, 2 years later, when I received a grand jury indictment from them for this alleged crime. The evidence will show that Chandler Police treated this incident as self-defense.
I'm going to object to that.
Objection sustained. The jury should disregard that last statement.
The evidence will show you that my brother, Alex Cox, passed away on December 12th, 2019, almost exactly 5 months to the day after Charles, my husband, passed away. The evidence will show that Alex passed away from a blood clot in his lung.
Objection again.
I'll sustain the objection. It's not relevant for this matter.
The evidence will show you that I am the only person being charged with this crime.
I'm going to object to the relevance of that.
Sustained.
As the state has mentioned, they're alleging that insurance money was my motive. Social Security was my motive. Spouses having insurance policies is not a crime. Collecting Social Security is not a crime. Self-defense is not a crime. A family tragedy is not a crime. It's a tragedy. Thank you.
All right, the state can call its first witness.
Thank you. If I may go get him.
All right, sir, you're going to come up right here. My clerk will swear you in right here.
W-I-E-R-Z-B-I-C-K-I.
And your first name?
I-R-W-I.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right, you're going to have a seat up here.
Sir, would you please tell the jury your name?
My name's Sergeant Erwin Worsbicky. I work for the Chandler Police Department. How long have you worked for the Chandler Police Department?
June will be 10 years.
Did you have any prior law enforcement experience?
I had 10 years in Illinois.
On July 11th of 2019, what were your duties at that time?
I was working as a patrol officer, I believe in beat 18.
And what were your hours?
0600 to 1600.
Is that 6 a.m.?
6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Yes.
Thank you. Were you dispatched to a residence at 5531 South Four Peaks Place in Chandler, Maricopa County, Arizona?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were you dispatched for?
It was a shooting.
Were you the first on the scene when you arrived?
I was,
What did you
ma'am.
see? Okay. What were you wearing at the time?
I was in full patrol uniform.
Does the Chandler Police Department, back then, did they have body-worn camera?
They did.
And can you describe where that was and how that works?
I believe back then I wore it on my left shoulder.
Okay. And how does it get activated?
You have to press a button and it'll turn it on.
Does it normally record audio?
Yes.
And did you have that on and did you activate it when you arrived to this scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there other officers on scene at some point when you got there?
After I arrived, yes.
You're saying it was 760, so I pulled the printer to see if I could get.
What other officers arrived on scene?
Right after I arrived, Officer Krautheim arrived.
Can you describe to us sort of what happened as you get to the scene? How did you guys, you and Officer Krautheim, handle the situation?
When I was getting out of the car, I believe the gentleman that called in was still on the phone, and we advised dispatch to tell him to come out with nothing in his hands except his phone. As he opened up or came out the front door, I started giving him commands. That was what I wanted him to do.
So you're talking with dispatch. Is that the same as 911?
Yeah, it's the same dispatch center.
So is the person who's talking to the 911 person then just relaying information to you?
Yes.
So you're able to tell that tell dispatch to tell the person to come out.
Yes.
Did you and Officer Krautheim have someone come out?
Yes.
Can you describe for us the person's demeanor as they're first exiting?
He was very nonchalant, very compliant with us.
Okay. You said he still had his phone?
Yes.
Do you recall if his other hand was up?
I do not recall.
Okay. Do you recall where he came out of from the house?
He came out the front door.
Okay. When he exited the house, what did you guys have him do?
We gave him commands to come towards us and then have a seat on the curb.
Okay. So there's just two of you officers still at this point?
Yes.
What did you do at this point?
I decided to go check for anybody that was injured inside and clear the house, make sure there was nobody else in there.
Okay. What did Officer Krautheim do?
I believe he started speaking to the gentleman that we had come out the house.
So he stayed outside
Yes.
and you went into the house?
Yes, ma'am.
When you talk about clearing the house, can you tell us what that means? What do you do?
We just wanted to make sure that if anyone needed aid rendered to them, we could render aid to them, or if there are any more suspects in the residence, that we could try to apprehend them.
Does that mean that you walked through the entire house?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And all that's when your body cam is on?
Yes, ma'am.
When you first entered that house, can you describe for us what you saw when you walked in that front door?
Yeah, initially when I walked in, it opened up in like a day room or something like that, and just off to the right, I saw somebody laying on the ground, motionless.
Did you notice anything about that room?
It was empty,
So no furniture?
no furniture. Yeah, it was just an empty room.
The person that you saw to the right, male or female?
Male.
And can you describe how you saw him laying on the ground?
Yeah, he was laying on his back, I believe with both of his hands to his side, motionless. And then I went over to him to check his pulse.
Is that standard for police to check the welfare of any potential victims?
Yes.
When you checked the pulse, did you find one?
No.
Did you notice anything else about this victim?
Yeah, I noticed that there were 2 apparent gunshot wounds to his chest area, and there was blood pooling in like his kind of like neck collar area.
Did he appear to still be alive to you?
No.
As part of your job, both with your prior experience in Illinois and your experience here in Arizona, have you seen deceased people before?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you think this person was dead?
Yes, ma'am.
If you didn't think he was dead, are police trained to do CPR?
Yes, ma'am. We're all certified to.
Would you have done that if you believed that would have helped him?
Absolutely.
So even though a person appears deceased to you, is fire still called out to check on them?
Yes.
Why is that?
They go through their own process and procedures, and I believe they usually give the official time of death.
Okay. Did you notice anything else in that room where that male was lying?
I can't think of anything right now, no.
Do you recall seeing any projectiles on the ground near the victim?
Objection, leading.
It's a yes or no question.
I believe I did, yes.
Okay. When you walked in the house after you saw this male on the ground, did you continue through the house?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that to clear it?
Yes.
And will paramedics or fire come in if you haven't cleared the house yet?
Usually, no.
So they want to make sure it's okay as well?
Yes.
After you cleared the house, did you, or as you were clearing the house, did you ever locate any weapons?
Yes, I believe we located a firearm in one of the back bedrooms.
Okay. Did you touch that in any way?
I don't recall.
Okay. After you cleared the house, did fire enter?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did fire do?
They began to try to render aid to the victim.
By the time fire came in, were other officers now on scene?
Yes.
Were you still wearing and recording with your body cam?
Yes, ma'am.
Does the body cam, you told us that it's on your shoulder. Does it always show where you're looking?
No.
So your eyes or your head can be turned to a different direction than what the camera is actually
Yeah,
showing?
if I was turning and talking to the judge, my camera would be.
I want to show you a video. And if I can have my paralegal bring that up and have him identify it. And sir, if you can just look at that and let me know if you recognize that as your body cam minus the audio of it.
Yeah, that's my body cam.
Do you recognize that as you in it?
Yes, ma'am.
And you have previously watched that?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, the state will move to admit exhibit number 2, I believe. Exhibit number 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
Two is admitted.
And Your Honor, if we may publish it.
You may.
So this is the house you're walking up to, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
As you're talking to dispatch?
Yes.
And this is the individual that is coming out that you asked dispatch to have come out?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that Officer Krautheim in the back?
It is.
Are you announcing
Yes, ma'am.
that standard?
Yes.
That where you checked to see if this male had a pulse?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the weapon that you told us that you found?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you letting people know on your radio that you've found a weapon?
I believe so, yes.
You told us that other officers were arriving?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that what we see here happening?
Yes.
And is fire also starting to come in?
I believe they were right behind him, yes.
That you continued to clear the rest of the house?
Yes, ma'am.
So what do we see there?
It appears that the fire is rendering aid to the victim, or attempting to.
Were you walking around trying to find identification for,
Yes, ma'am.
were you able to ever find an identification for him?
I was not.
So no wallet laying around,
No.
no ID in his pocket?
I didn't check his pockets, but no, I don't think fire found one.
So you're kind of talking with them to let them know who this is as well?
Yes,
Because they're documenting it.
yes.
And is that the individual who came out with the phone from the house?
Yes, ma'am.
The one that dispatch and 911 told to come out?
Yes.
When you were interacting with him there, what was his demeanor like?
He was extremely calm.
You told us that you were looking for the wallet for this individual. Did it seem unusual to you that you couldn't find one?
I wouldn't say it was unusual. I didn't know if he lived there or not, so I just kind of looked around to see if there was anything laying around.
Is this you still trying to see if there's anything in the residence that might be related to that individual?
I think I was just giving Officer Cohen a recap of what I already went and looked through.
And I've shown defense counsel or defendant exhibits 3 and 4. I have a paralegal from those two up to the officer to review as well. Do you recognize those as sort of screenshots of two different views during your body cam footage?
Yes.
State will move to admit exhibits 3 and 4.
Any objection?
No objection.
3 and 4 admitted.
And if I may publish them. So in this photo, when you were looking at it, were you able to see here's where you are checking to see the pulse of this individual?
Yes, ma'am.
And did this also reflect what you had talked about of the blood pooling that had run towards his neck area?
Yes.
Exhibit 4. Is this sort of when we first see you walk back in and we see fire working on the individual?
Yes.
You told us that when that individual who was on the call with 911 came out, that you observed the phone with him. He was kind of holding it.
Yeah.
Did you ever see any other phone in the house as you were looking around? Anything obvious laying around?
I don't recall, no. I don't believe I did.
No phone on the ground near the deceased male? After you had cleared the house, allowed fire to enter, and other officers were arriving, were you tasked with going out to put up some crime scene tape?
Yes, ma'am.
What does that mean?
It's just tape that keeps the general public out, keeps the media out, so we have a secure scene, and it doesn't get tainted by anybody or anything.
So that included both the house and some of the street.
Yes, ma'am.
Did that sort of end your involvement?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
All right, cross-examination.
It's Sergeant. Where's Vicky? Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I like to get that right. Okay. You said that the individual exiting the house was nonchalant. Is that correct?
I don't know if I used those words, but he seemed very calm, yes.
Very calm.
Yes.
Is that the same thing to you as nonchalant?
I wouldn't use that word, so I would say he looked very calm and unbothered.
But you said nonchalant a minute ago.
I don't recall saying that.
Okay. Does everyone act the same in a stressful situation that you've experienced? No? Are you qualified to give someone a psychological evaluation?
No,
No. You put your hand on my husband's neck for checking for a pulse, is that correct?
yes, ma'am.
That's what you did when you first came in?
Yes,
Did you perform CPR?
no,
No. Why not?
because it was apparent to me that he was deceased.
And that's not your protocol
To what?
to perform CPR until fire comes in?
Not if it's going to make it even worse because they had apparent gunshot wounds to the chest.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if I start pumping on his chest, it's going to start spewing blood out of his chest even at a more rapid pace.
So when the 911 operator was telling my brother to do that, that same thing would happen?
All depends on when the call came into dispatch.
But I'm saying if you're doing CPR on someone with a gunshot wound in the chest, on the chest.
Could, yes.
Yeah, okay. And you said something else. You said fire gives official time of death. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And what was that time of death? Do you know?
I do not recall.
And you cleared the house before fire came in. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you were looking for some kind of identification?
When
Yes.
I cleared the house,
Yes.
I was looking for other potential victims and/or suspects.
Okay. But you were told on the phone that no one else was in the house but Alex. Is that correct?
I don't recall if I was told that or not.
Okay. Do you have any crime scene investigation experience?
Just my 20 years of experience as a police officer.
And you said something about, and this is just for me to understand, you said something about the casings being to the left of him or to the right of him?
I didn't say they were to the left or to the right.
Oh, did you say west or east?
No.
Oh, sorry, that was my interpretation. Can you tell me what the weapon was that you found?
It was a handgun.
Was it a 45?
Don't recall.
Okay. Could you tell what direction the bullet came from?
Based off the way the body was laying, I could assume it came from where his feet were at.
Near the feet? Did you see the projectile that was in the baseboard?
I don't recall if I saw that or not.
You said he did not appear alive, that you already thought that he was deceased. Is that correct, when you entered into the house?
Yes.
What time was that?
I believe I was dispatched to the call at 8:41. So, I mean, if I was going to make a guess on what time I walked into the house, I would say I was probably at the residence within 10 minutes.
So around 8:51, perhaps?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. And then when fire took over, is that the normal protocol for fire to take over and do the CPR?
Yes.
And so you didn't do CPR, but they did do the CPR. Is that correct?
Yes.
On top of the gunshot wound.
Yes.
Is that normal protocol?
I don't know what their protocol is.
Okay. I'm just asking because I wouldn't think to do that either. And then you said that you went outside to put up the crime scene tape. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So you were, after you cleared the house, you left and went to the front yard?
Yes.
And then you were there for how long at the residence before you left?
I couldn't give you a time.
Did you stay for a while, or was that the end of your job there?
I don't recall. It was a long time ago. I have no idea how long I was actually on scene for.
And who is your direct supervisor?
I believe that day it was Sergeant Nocella.
I'm sorry, what was the last name?
Nocella?
Okay. And what contact did you have with Detective Moffett that day?
I don't know if I had any with him on scene.
Okay. What about Detective England, perhaps?
I may have briefly spoke to her while I was on scene.
Okay. One time, 2 times, 3 times?
I couldn't tell you a number.
Okay. And then when you have to report to your superior before you left the scene?
He was on scene, I would imagine.
Nocella? Is
Yes.
that what you said? Okay. And then you don't know what time you left, but you arrived at approximately 8:51?
Give or take, yes.
And then did you see me arrive at the scene?
I think as I was leaving, yes.
So approximately around the time that I arrived, you were leaving.
I don't know if I left when you arrived, but I was on my way out of the crime scene as far as I know.
Okay. And then you said something about 2 wounds. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how did you see the 2 wounds through the shirt?
Just was an observation that I made when I saw him laying on the ground.
So did you see 2 holes in the shirt?
I'm not sure exactly what I saw when I was there, but I could see that there were 2 apparent gunshot wounds to his chest.
And then I'm sure, well, I won't speak for you. So when they began CPR, they did open his shirt. Is that correct?
I have no idea.
Because when you walked by, his shirt was open.
Objection to question.
Yeah, please ask questions only.
Did you discuss this case with Sergeant Nocella?
I don't believe so. I would imagine he was on scene and he got briefed by the detectives.
He got briefed by the detectives? Is that what you
In
said?
fact, I would imagine, yes.
Okay. And then have you spoken to the case agent on this case? How many times would you say?
Who's the case agent?
Oh, Detective Duncan. That's my
Detective
understanding.
Duncan? I mean, I've spoken to him many times in my career.
Regarding this case, how many times do you think you've spoken to Detective Duncan?
I couldn't even put a number on it. I would say very few.
Very few? Like, how many would you guess?
I would say maybe 5 times.
5 times. Thank you. And would that be in-person kind of discussions, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say they were discussions, probably just in passing.
Okay. So how many times have you emailed with Detective Duncan concerning this case?
Objection to relevance.
Overruled, you can answer if you know.
I have no idea.
What about text messages?
No idea.
Phone calls?
Ma'am, I have no idea.
Okay. And your report that you wrote about this, about how long after the incident did you make your report?
I was done by the end of my work shift at 4 o'clock.
And then did you ever make any revisions to that report?
I don't believe so.
So you left the scene approximately sometime in the morning, and by 4 o'clock that day you had written your report. Is
Yes.
that correct? And you've never changed anything on your report?
Not that I recall, ma'am.
And the report is exactly as you left it when you... Did you review it for this testimony today?
Yes.
And it was exactly the same as when you wrote it at 4 p.m. on July 11th?
I don't know if I wrote it at 4 p.m. It was
Or
done
by 4 p.m.
but It appears to be yes.
Okay. Thank you, that's all I have.
All right, redirect.
Sergeant, you were asked about the shooter's demeanor. Just telling us what you observed?
Yes.
What did you observe?
I just observed him very calm and collected after just shooting somebody.
And that's both seeing him come out as well as having some interaction with him on the curb?
Yes, ma'am.
When a person is been shot and you check for a pulse and you believe they are deceased, as a police officer, are you supposed to touch the body?
No.
Is the body basically a crime scene?
Yes.
Based upon your training and experience, did you believe that the victim was deceased?
Yes, ma'am.
Do fire have EKG heart monitors and things that they use to determine if maybe you missed a pulse?
Yes, ma'am.
When you talked about giving CPR, if an individual is now a crime scene, would giving CPR to that deceased person change the crime scene?
Yes.
And so as someone who believed the person was deceased, you did not want to modify or change the crime scene?
Correct.
You were asked about the gun. Is the gun part of the crime scene?
Yes.
Were you responsible for processing the crime scene?
No.
Why didn't you go in there and pick it up and start handling it?
Because I didn't want to alter where it was laying when he got done using it.
You were asked a lot about when 911 was called, when you were dispatched. This was a few years ago,
Several, yes.
2019.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there something called a CAD report that documents when 911 was called, when you were dispatched, when you arrived, and even when you left?
Yes, ma'am.
Would looking at the CAD report help refresh your recollection as to when those events occurred?
Yes.
If I may have my paralegal provide him with a copy of the CAD report.
You want me to?
Starting, does looking at the CAD report help refresh your recollection as to when the 911 call was received?
Yes, ma'am.
When was that?
It was received at 8:36.
Does looking at the CAD report help refresh your recollection as to when you were dispatched?
It appears it was dispatched at 8:37.
So your memory of saying 8:50 or so was perhaps incorrect.
Yes.
Was looking at the CAD report indicate when you arrived?
8:43.
So again, that was a little earlier than your memory was.
Yes, ma'am.
And does looking at the CAD report help determine or refresh your recollection as to when you left the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
When was that?
It's 5:31 p.m.
As As a police officer who is one of the first on scene, do you provide briefing or information to your sergeant or the detectives on scene as to what you saw, observed, and did?
If they ask me directly, yes, somebody will brief them that's on scene.
But you have to provide somebody that information to then provide to the detectives?
Yes.
Why is it done that way?
Because usually a supervisor is going to want to know what's going on and what we did, just so the detectives know exactly what they're walking into.
So for instance, if you had had to move the gun, they would want to know that, right?
Yes,
Or if you had moved the body, they would want to know that too, right?
yes,
And if you had found any evidence, would they want to know that as well?
absolutely.
And so is that what you would have to do that day when you are speaking to the sergeant or detectives?
Yes.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Does any member of the jury have a question for this witness? If so, please write it on the provided form. I'm not seeing any questions come down. You can step down, sir. All right, the state can call its next witness.
Thank you. If I may go get.
All right, go ahead and have a seat over here to my left.
Sir, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
I'm Robert Krautheim.
And where do you currently work?
I currently work at the Sandra Day O'Connor Federal Courthouse
Back in 2019, where were you working?
as a Chandler police officer in Chandler, Arizona.
How long did you work for the Chandler Police Department?
25 years.
When did you retire?
About 3 years ago, February.
When you were working there in July of 2019, what were your duties at that time?
I was a patrol officer. I was responding to calls for service.
Okay. And do you recall what your shift was at that time?
It was a day shift. I think I start my shift at 6 and end at 4.
Were you working patrol for Chandler Police Department on July 11th of 2019 at about 8:36 a.m.?
I was.
Were you dispatched to 5531 South Four Peaks Place in Chandler, Maricopa County, Arizona?
Yes.
What were you dispatched for?
A shooting that had just occurred.
Based upon the information that was, well, let me ask you this. When you are arriving to a scene, do you get information relayed to you about this call?
I do.
Why is that?
The call taker is asking the person on the phone what's going on, where it is, who's there, just basic information. And then dispatch relays that information to me as I'm driving to the call for service.
Is that so you have a better idea about what you're walking into?
Yes, it's on a computer, but verbally, the stuff that's really pertinent before I arrive is just verbally done over the air.
So when you were arriving on the scene, did you think this shooting had just occurred?
I did.
When you got to this 5531 South Four Peaks, were there any other officers on scene yet?
Yeah, Officer Wiz was there.
Is that Officer?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
What were you wearing?
Patrol outfit, basically a patrol uniform, police uniform, body-worn camera.
And back then, where was your body-worn camera?
At the time, it was a lipstick camera, so part of it was here, but the camera's actually on my right shoulder.
Okay. And was that on and recording as you sort of arrived on scene and while you were present there?
Yeah, I started recording while I was driving there.
Okay. When you arrived, did you know whether or not the 911 caller was still on the phone?
Yeah, she was still on the phone.
And when you were talking with dispatch, did you arrange to have this person come out, or did Officer Wisbicki do that?
Yes, dispatch advised him to come out of the home without anything and hands up in the air. That's kind of standard.
And did he comply with that?
He did,
What exit did he come out of?
at the front door.
Okay. Can you describe sort of his appearance and demeanor as you observed him coming out of the house?
His clothes were clean. He was calm, not emotional at all. Different than what I would have anticipated.
When he first exited, did you notice any injuries to him?
He was holding, it was a white rag at the time. It was just kind of red and white. He was holding it on the back of his head
When he first exited or later?
as he's coming out of the house.
Did you notice any difficulty walking or talking when you first had contact with him?
No,
Any difficulty sitting or standing?
no,
Did you learn the name of this person?
I did.
What was his name?
Alex Cox.
Did you observe him sweating at all when he first came out?
No,
Any type of jitters?
no,
Any uneven or broken voice?
no,
At some point, did you notice an injury to him?
I did.
And where was it?
On the back of his head, towards his right side.
And what did you see?
I articulated my written report as about an inch laceration, a small like knot, and it was bleeding a little bit.
If we can fix that. Alex Cox patting or rubbing the back of his head with some sort of rag or paper towel.
Yes,
Without going into what was said, did you talk with him?
I did.
Did you offer him medical treatment?
I did.
Did he ask for medical treatment?
He did not.
Was there anything about his talking with you or actions that made you concerned that you thought you should override that?
Yes.
Let me make sure you understood. Was there anything about what you observed with Alex Cox talking or his ability to move that made you think you should override his decision to not get treatment, and you thought, oh, he better get treatment, he's so bad off?
Oh, zero, none.
At some point while you were talking with Alex Cox, did you see a female and a teenager show up at the scene?
I did.
And did you eventually go speak with those two?
I did.
Where did you speak with them?
Just on the other side of the street, they had parked right across from the house.
Did you speak with the adult female?
I did.
Did you ask for a driver's license to identify her?
I did.
And who was that person?
Lori Vallow.
Do you see Lori Vallow in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you point her out and tell us what she is wearing for the record?
She's at the defense table wearing a white shirt underneath looks like a black jacket.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant.
Shall.
When you went to speak with Lori Vallow, did you know that the deceased person in the house was her husband?
I did.
When you went to speak with Lori Vallow, did you ask her whether or not the individual inside her husband lived there?
I did not ask her that.
Can you describe for us Lori Vallow's demeanor as you were interacting with her?
Calm, nonchalant, just kind of a matter of fact, just talking to me as I'm talking to you now.
When you went to speak with Lori Vallow, can you tell us approximately how many police cars were parked around there?
Well, I don't know either myself. I know there was at least mine and Officer Wiz's. There's a fire truck there. I think there was an ambulance there, and I think there may have been another police car. I can't remember, but there was a lot of emergency vehicles just near the home itself.
And was her brother Alex Cox sitting sort of in view of her?
Literally across the street, like the desk of the prosecutor would be her car. This is the street, and I had Alex seated right on the sidewalk.
When she first arrived, did she actually walk up to where you were with Alex Cox?
Yes, she did.
And you asked her to go back to the other side of the street?
I did.
Did she ever ask you how her brother was doing?
No.
Did she ever ask you if her brother needed medical attention from being hit by a bat?
No.
Did she ever ask you why there were so many police cars around the neighborhood?
No.
Did she ask you why there was a fire truck parked in front of her house?
No.
So other than gathering basic information, did you really talk to her about anything else?
No.
And were you wearing that body-worn camera footage or camera when you had contact with her?
I did.
After you talked with Lori Vallow, did you go back and stand near Alex Cox again?
Yes.
If I can have my paralegal go up and show him exhibit number 1. Do you recognize exhibit number 1?
I do.
Is that a copy of your body cam footage from July 11th of 2019?
It is.
Is it missing the audio other than during your interaction with Lori Vallow?
Correct. Yes.
And did you initially identify that previously as your body cam?
I did.
State will move to admit exhibit number 1.
Any objection to exhibit number 1? Any
No
objection to
No objection.
exhibit 1's admitted?
And if we could publish it.
Go ahead.
So is this you responding to the scene?
Correct.
And was your camera flipped upside down initially?
Well, the camera wasn't. The orientation of the software was.
So that's why we see the axon and stuff in the bottom corner upside down.
That is correct.
So this was a gated community?
It was.
As you're driving, did you go by the fire truck here?
I did.
And is it standard for fire to stage a little ways away from the scene when it's a shooting?
Yes.
Why is that?
So they could respond quickly.
Do they want you to clear the residence first before they show up?
Yeah, it needs to be safe for the firemen. We had to make sure there's no one else in the house that was armed or in the area.
And as you're arriving, is the person, the shooter, still inside the house?
I can't recollect. I think he was at the door right now or just coming out to the door.
Why did you pull your weapon?
I was just told somebody killed somebody, so yeah, for my safety, I wanted to make sure I rendered him safe before I put my gun away. It was a threat to me.
So when he came out, he had both his hands up in the air? So at that point, nothing touching his head yet, no?
Correct.
Now, did you stay out with him while Officer Worsbicky went inside?
I did.
While you're talking with him during this whole time, at this point, he still hasn't brought anything out to try to place on his injury.
Correct.
When he came out, did he already have those sunglasses on the top of his head?
He did.
Why did you have him move over here?
I actually physically couldn't hear him. Fire trucks are incredibly loud, so I had to move away.
So fire had already pulled up to now go inside the residence.
Correct.
And can you kind of see them in the corner going in?
Yes.
Did you learn whose truck that was in the driveway?
I don't recollect right now whose truck it is. I think it's his, but I'm not sure.
And who is that other officer there?
That's Officer Wizbeski. Sorry, I've been calling him Wiz since I've known him.
Shorter. Were you initially trying to control the scene yourself, sort of helping to tell people where to go and what to do?
Oh, absolutely. My head's on kind of a swivel. I'm always kind of looking around like people just walk up to you and ask you what's going on. And you got to make sure no one's going to walk up to the house. So you just try to keep it as pristine as you can.
So we see him putting his head now, or his hand on the back of his head, correct?
Yes.
And you indicated there's a fire truck there. You asked him if he wanted any medical attention?
I did.
Who are those?
That's Lori Vallow and her daughter.
So when you said across the street, we just saw a red SUV. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
So at this point, did you know the name of the individual inside the residence?
Yes.
And who was that?
Charles Vallow.
And did you at this point understand who that woman was that walked up?
Yes.
And who did you believe she was?
His wife.
Normally, when someone is shot and killed, is there a team of detectives and crime scene specialists who will come out to handle the case?
Yes.
And are you, as patrol officers, sort of stuck with taking care of it until they arrive?
Yeah, we deal with the burning, bleeding, and blowing up stuff. Anything that takes time and a lot more in-depth stuff, that's what the detectives do.
And then what do we see here that just came up?
Looks like an ambulance.
You told us that you understood when you were arriving that this shooting had just happened. Do you recall at this point when the 911 call came in?
No, I don't remember specifics on the time. I think at 8:39 I was dispatched to it. And I would imagine the call for service came in a minute or two before that.
And approximately, do you recall how long it took you to get to the scene?
Probably 4 or 5 minutes.
We see more people walking up. Are you trying to stop the contamination of the scene by having more people walk in there?
Yes, I told the firemen kind of what was maybe in the house, and Officer Wiz was already in the house, and so we were just trying to control how many firemen went into the house.
So when you're the first on scene, are you trying to have the least number of people go in there as possible?
Yes,
Are you trying to not touch anything that's not necessary to be touched?
correct, yes.
Obviously, if fire's going to work on a person, they're going to have to contaminate it somewhat.
Yes.
Is that when we sort of see fire now leaving?
I couldn't, just from recollection, I couldn't answer that.
We see something in Officer Becky's hand. Is that the crime scene tape?
Yes. We do an inner and then an outer perimeter.
Is it normal for a patrol officer to have to stay with the individual who is the shooter and ensure that no one else is contacting them?
Yes.
So you don't want any of the neighbors walking up to them?
Correct. At this moment, I'm still basically fact-finding. I'm just trying to figure out what happened, when it happened, who was involved kind of thing. And yeah, I try to keep them separate.
At some point, do sergeants and others start arriving on scene?
Yes, that's my Sergeant Nacella.
When you have a scene like this where detectives are going to be called out, do all the different patrol officers provide their information that could be relevant to one person who can then brief the detectives?
Yes, I briefed my supervisor to let him know from my point of view what I know and what I was told. And then at some point, I think he would disseminate that to the detectives.
Okay. So is this you kind of telling him at this point what you've learned?
Yes.
And can we also see what the body camera looks like on the shoulder there?
Yes, he has the same type.
What made you decide that you needed to go over and talk to Lori Vallow?
Again, it's fact-finding, really. It's who are you? And when I say who, I always like to identify them by their Arizona driver's license because although my name is Robert, I go by Rob. So I don't want to assume her name is just Lori. It could be something specifically or longer. So I usually ask people for identification.
And that's so you can put that into your report appropriately.
Correct.
So we saw the ambulance leave. That means they didn't transport him.
Correct.
Did you learn that you actually couldn't cordon off this area the way you had initially thought because there was only one way out?
That is correct. We initially, as you can see, cordoned off part of the road so anybody couldn't just drive up to us. We later learned that's the only way that part of the neighborhood could actually exit the neighborhood. So we had to change the tape a little bit.
And then we see fire leave here as well. So now it's just police basically at the scene?
Police and I think a crime scene technician.
And are you still the only person responsible for making sure that no one is talking with Alex Cox?
I am.
Okay.
Is this where you go over to speak with Ms. Vallow?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. You guys know.
You could turn up the volume.
Let me just get your. Do you have a driver's license with you? I can just grab it. Thank you. L-O-R-I. What does your middle initial stand for?
Noreen.
Noreen. N-O. V-A-L-L. What's a phone number for you, Lori? 755?
5452.
You know, not in Santan, this is your home?
Right,
Gotcha,
right.
okay.
We just moved in here.
Gotcha. How long have you guys lived here?
I'm sorry,
How long have you lived here?
like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors don't know us.
Gotcha.
Like, hi neighbor, sorry.
Are you working at all?
No.
Okay. And you're still about 5'6"? 120.
Did you also get biographical information from teenager?
I did.
Was that Tylee Ryan?
It was.
Let's stop it now. After you had talked with Alex Cox and Lori Vallow, did you go brief some of the detectives about what you had learned?
I did.
Did you tell the detectives that Lori Vallow did not know that her husband Charles was dead?
I told them that I did not advise her of such.
Okay. Did you believe that she did not know that her husband was dead?
I did.
Why did you believe that?
Well, I was under the understanding that this just happened. She just arrived back on scene, and I did not advise her of what happened in the house.
When you spoke with Alex Cox, did he provide additional information that made you believe that she was not present when the shooting happened?
Yes.
After you advised the detectives of this, did you then return and remain with Alex Cox for a significant additional period of time?
Yes.
Were you eventually asked to transport him to the police station?
I was.
Can you describe his demeanor during the transport?
Calm. Didn't ask. We just talked about things not related to this at all. Just a conversation between like me and you, just normal, average tone, calm.
And did you stay with him at the police station until a detective arrived?
Yes,
Did that end your involvement in this case?
it did.
I have no further questions.
All right, cross-examination?
Can you pronounce your last name for me? I don't want to get it wrong.
Krautheim.
Krautheim.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, Officer Krautheim.
At the
correct?
time, yes.
At the time. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. You mentioned about Alex being calm when he exited the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then he's also, you were advised that he had told the 911 operator that he composed himself and then called 911. Is that correct?
I don't remember the compose himself, but I think he did.
But you stated in your report that Alex was very calm throughout the entire time talking with him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the scene itself, was it chaotic?
No.
Were people running around screaming?
No.
Were people running in and out of the front door?
No.
So were the officers calm?
It was just me and another officer.
Were you calm?
Yes,
Was the other officer calm?
he was.
Were the detectives calm?
They were.
Was the fire department calm?
I didn't interact with him very much. I couldn't answer that.
Your friend the Wiz was calm?
Yes, the other officer, yes.
So when I arrived at the scene, things were pretty calm.
Is that a question?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you were calm.
No, I'm saying when I arrived at the scene itself was calm environment.
It was.
Okay. So if I would have been hysterical, that would have been more out of character than if I was calm when everybody else was being calm. Isn't that
Objection,
correct?
Speculation.
Sustain.
So you said that Alex was calm and was holding a towel in his right hand and holding it up to the back of his head. Is that correct?
He did.
And you said, oh, sorry, it's in my other note. Just now that his head had a 1-inch laceration. Is that correct?
Yes,
That's like a cut down his head. 1
It
inch?
is.
Okay. And you said a small knot.
I did.
Is that correct? Okay. That it was bleeding a little. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And so a small knot is what you declared it, but would you not call it a goose egg?
tomato, tomato.
Okay. Did Alex ask for medical treatment?
He did not.
How many times did you ask him if he needed medical treatment?
I think 3 times.
Okay. And there was EMS right there next to you?
Yes,
So an EMS person could have just come over and checked the back of his head pretty easily, yeah?
yes,
Yes. But no one asked anybody to do that? Correct?
correct.
Okay. And he didn't seem disoriented to you at all?
No,
So you didn't think he needed any kind of medical attention at the time?
no,
And he didn't ask for any at the time?
correct. He did not.
And you didn't supply any at the time?
Correct.
Okay. But EMT was right there next to you?
Yes,
Okay. That's another thing that you said, calm and nonchalant. Is that correct? You
Yes.
stated that Alex was nonchalant. What is your definition of nonchalant?
kind of like how I am now. I don't have a lot of emotion. I'm not afraid, just nonchalant.
Is that your typical demeanor?
I guess it depends on the situation and the circumstance.
I mean, this can be a stressful situation, right? So it's your demeanor right now.
It is.
Testifying in court can be a stressful situation.
I guess it can be.
So if that was Alex's normal demeanor, then it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for him to be nonchalant.
Objection, speculation.
I'll allow it. I'll allow the answer. He doesn't know the demeanor, but you can answer.
Can you ask the question again?
Yeah, so if Alex's normal demeanor was like your normal demeanor, and even in a stressful situation, if he was nonchalant, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for him to be nonchalant again, because that's his normal demeanor. Correct?
Objection to compound question.
I'll sustain that objection.
You mentioned that I had parked across the street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why did I have to park across the street?
I don't know.
So we saw on the body cam, right, that there was a huge fire truck, correct?
Yes.
There was police cars, correct?
Yes.
There was a CSI van, correct?
Parked somewhere. I don't know where.
Next to the house, kind of, I guess, south of the house. So there was nowhere to park except for across the street. Is that correct?
No,
That's not correct?
that is not correct.
Where else could I have parked?
Well, the street's long. You could have parked anywhere along the street. You could have parked on the other street. That's where I parked. Or you could park on the other side of the street, south of the home, where there was plenty of parking. So there was other options to park.
But I parked as close as I could to the scene so that I could come talk to you. Is that correct?
Speculation, testifying.
Sustain.
So we can agree that there were lots of police vehicles blocking the house. Is that correct?
Emergency vehicles.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, emergency, police, fire, CSI, all were there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But even though all of those things were there, the scene was not chaotic. Is that correct?
Correct.
It was a very calm scene that day.
Objection asked and answered.
Do you know how hot it was that day?
No, but it was hot.
It was hot. Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. What was the extent of your duties that day? I know that you had arrived on the scene. You said dispatched was about 8:39 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then it took you about 4 to 5 minutes to arrive.
Yes.
And then you were the first on the scene.
No.
No. Who was the first on the scene? Do you know?
Wiz was.
Oh, that's correct. And then who arrived? How long after he arrived did you arrive? Do you know?
Oh, I was like seconds,
Okay.
maybe 10, 15 seconds.
And then you were right there when Alex came out of the house,
I was.
and you were with him basically that whole time till he
Yes.
got into the police car?
Yes,
And then did you drive him to the station?
I did.
So you were in the car with him the whole time?
Yes.
So you really never didn't have eyes on Alex from the time he came out of the house till the time he got to the police station?
Correct.
Okay. And did you have a conversation on the way to the police station?
I did.
You did. And that's the second body cam we didn't watch, is that correct? That has your name on it?
Yeah, there's another body worn camera we haven't seen.
Right, from the police car, I'm saying.
Yes, me driving.
You driving, but it comes from the car, not from the shoulder body cam, is that correct?
No, it comes from my body
Oh, it was
worn
still
camera.
on your shoulder?
Yes.
Okay. And in that, did you have a conversation with Alex on the way to the police station?
Yes.
Objection asked and answered.
And did he express,
Hold on. When
Sorry.
there's an objection.
I'm sorry.
Wait for the ruling. I'll sustain the objection, but the answer will stand nonetheless. Go ahead. Next question.
did he express to you that he kind of felt out of it because he hit?
Hearsay?
Sustain.
When did you make your report about the incident on July 11th, 2019?
I think what was the end of my workday that day, but I stopped and started it numerous times throughout the day.
So did you finish it that day, or it still took a few days?
No, I finished at the end of my shift,
By the end of your shift, which was what time that day?
4 o'clock.
Okay. And did you make any revisions to that later on?
No,
So this is the only report that you made in regards to the day of July 11th, 2019?
it is.
You stated that there was red liquid on the rag towel that appeared to be blood. Did you think it was something other than blood?
Well, I had no way to test it, so I have to articulate it that way.
So he was bleeding from the back of the head
He was.
on the right-hand side.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. And then was it you on the body cam who briefed the detectives, Detective Moffett and Detective Inklin, in the front yard?
Yes, I made contact with him, yes.
And then you had told them basically what Alex had conveyed to you, what happened?
Yes.
And then what do they do with that information? Do they just put it into a report?
I don't know. You'll have to ask them.
Okay. So your report goes to who after you're finished with it?
I sent it to my supervisor.
And who was that at the time? Do you remember?
That was Bill Nacella.
Oh, the same one?
Sergeant,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. And then, did you speak to the case agent on this case regarding this incident on July 11th?
I did at the time. That's when I walked up to them at the front door area.
Okay. And was Detective Moffett the case agent at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And now it's Detective Duncan, as far as you know?
As far as I know, I don't know for sure, but that's what I've been told.
Okay. And how long do you think that you were at the residence? What was the whole time before you guys left to go to the police station? Do you remember? Do you recall?
No, I do not. It would be in my CAD history on when I transported him from the home to the PD, so I'd have to look at that, and I don't know. 40 minutes, half hour, 40 minutes, something like that.
Now, someone on the video, and I don't remember who it was, but put a phone into a evidence bag. Was that you?
I don't recollect that.
Okay. And then got into the car. Did someone ride with you to the police station from the residence? Just you and Alex were in the car?
Yes,
No other officers?
correct.
But before you got into the car, an officer came over and took his phone and put it in an evidence bag?
You're asking me for recollection. I don't remember that. It's probable because we usually try to bring their property to the area where we're going to, so it's probable.
I just didn't see it in your report, but I saw it on the body cam, so I wondered if you knew. Okay.
I'm going to object to the defendant testifying.
All right. Please only make statements about what you saw or heard. That's testimony.
I apologize, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
So it says in your report that you were asked by Detective Moffett to transport Alex to the police station not handcuffed. Is that correct?
Yes,
And to the downstairs interview room. I'm assuming that's at Chandler Police Department,
it is.
correct? Okay. And it was just the two of you in the car on the ride there?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Then, when you arrived at the police station, what happened next?
Walked him up to the room, had him sit down, or I think brought him some water, I think. And the detective was literally behind me. It wasn't very long before he walked into the room.
So then Detective Moffett took over and you were excused?
Yes,
Okay. And then was that the extent of your duty
it was.
at that time? And did you leave the police station after that?
Yes.
Did you stay and observe the interview?
No.
So Detective Moffett took over for you and you departed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You said when you spoke to Alex that he was cooperative. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is it possible he could have been in shock?
Speculation.
Sustain.
From your observation, how long did the cut on Alex's head bleed? I mean, you were with him for that 40 minutes, and how long do you think it was bleeding?
Well, I couldn't answer that because I wasn't standing in the back of his head when I first made contact with him. So to be honest with you, I don't know when it started. So I don't have the minutes.
Did it appear to be bleeding when he exited the house, or no?
I didn't look at the back of his head right away when he exited the house.
When was the first time that you looked at it? About how long after he exited?
I can't answer time-wise, but it was during the time I had him seated at the sidewalk when I was talking to him.
Okay. Before he moved over or after?
Oh, after he moved over.
Okay. Did you ever enter into the house?
No.
You were just there in the front yard
Yes.
the whole time? Okay. When you talked to the two detectives in the front yard and gave them your synopsis of what had happened, you said they got into a domestic fight consisted,
Objection.
sorry,
I'm going to sustain the objection.
what was the legal objection?
Hearsay.
Hearsay.
Oh, I was just reading his report. Okay.
Then objection, no question.
Please ask your next question.
You said in your report that at one point Alex's niece grabbed the bat.
Objection,
Hold on.
hearsay,
That's
improper
hearsay.
question.
Okay, you can't ask hearsay. Please ask your next question.
Did Alex tell you that he got hit in the head with the bat?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay prior ruling.
Yeah, it's sustained. You can't ask questions of what Alex said.
So you observed that he had this bump on his head, but you didn't know how he got it. Is that correct?
No. That's not correct.
You did know how he got it. Is that correct?
I was told how he got it, which is different than me knowing how he got it, if that makes any sense.
Correct. You did not witness it, is what you're saying.
Correct.
But you knew that he had an injury to the back of his head on the right side.
I did.
Correct. Okay. And how did you obtain that information?
Your Honor,
You can't answer if it calls for hearsay.
Did you observe the next door neighbor come out in her nightgown to speak to me?
I did.
And then there was another neighbor on the other side that came out that you told him to go back into his house? Is that
I don't know if he was a
correct?
neighbor, but it was just some guy. Yeah. I assumed he was a neighbor.
Right. So they had blocked off the street so the neighbors couldn't really exit the neighborhood. They couldn't go to school or work, or it's kind of an issue there.
Not really. I mean, when one car told us the layout of the neighborhood, then we realized that was the only person that wanted to exit. They told us they couldn't exit, so we just fixed it so anyone else could leave.
Right. But they were trying to come up to me to find out what was happening.
objection,
Okay.
speculation, hearsay.
I'll sustain. Take our afternoon break for the staff